I'm Cassandra Mitchell, 30, and my grandmother's sourdough bakery was my whole world. It wasn't just a business, it was a San Francisco legacy built on her recipes from the gold rush days. When she passed, she left it to me, trusting I'd keep it alive. But my family had other plans. My parents and brother kept pushing me to sell it, saying it was the only way to cover my brother's debts from his failed real estate deals. I refused, knowing how much the bakery meant to me and her memory. Then one night they cornered me at their house. "Stop being selfish. That's a free house." My dad snapped, his voice sharp as a knife. My mom's eyes burned with anger. "Either share it or you're no longer my child," she yelled, slamming her hand on the table. The air was thick, their words cutting deep, but I felt a calm settle over me. I looked them in the eyes, smiled, and said, "Option 2. A week later, I made a choice that changed everything. What did I do? Stick around to find out. Has your family ever pressured you to give up something you cherish? Share your story in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe to join our community for more real-life drama. From the time I was a kid, the smell of sourdough in my grandmother's bakery felt like home. The old San Francisco house creaked under my feet, its worn wooden floors polished by decades of customers. The stone oven in the back glowed warm, spitting out crusty loaves that carried the tang of recipes from the gold rush. Handwritten parchments, yellowed and crinkled, hung above the counter, listing Grandma Florence's secrets to the perfect sourdough starter. Every morning, I'd watch her knead dough, her hands steady, teaching me to feel the texture just right. "This place is our heart," she'd say, her voice soft but firm, tying me to the bakery like it was family. Those moments shaped me, made me dream of carrying her legacy forward. But my brother Trevor never cared about the bakery. A few years older than me at 30, I was pouring everything into keeping the place alive, scraping by on thin profits. Trevor, meanwhile, strutted around in tailored suits, flashing cash from shady real estate deals that never panned out. He'd show up at the bakery unannounced, his polished shoes clicking on the floor. I'd find him behind the counter, rifling through the cash register, pocketing bills without a word. "Just borrowing," he'd mutter, brushing off the stack of unpaid supplier invoices piling up. The first time I caught him, I thought it was a mistake. By the fifth, I couldn't stay quiet. "Trevor, you can't keep taking money," I said one afternoon, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. The bakery was quiet, just the hum of the oven. He turned his jaw tight, eyes narrowing. "Don't lecture me, Cassandra," he snapped. "You're not Mom." I pointed to the invoices, explaining how his borrowing left me scrambling to pay bakers and keep the lights on. He laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're just bad-mouthing me to look good," he said, tossing a crumpled 20 on the counter like it fixed everything. I stood there stunned, the weight of his words sinking in. That evening, I called my parents, hoping they'd see reason. "Dad, Mom, Trevor's taking cash from the bakery," I said, gripping the phone. Dad's voice came through gruff. "He's your brother, Cassandra. He's struggling." "Don't be selfish." Mom chimed in, her tone sharp. "Why are you making him sound like a thief? He's family." I felt my chest tighten, their words echoing Trevor's accusation. They didn't ask about the bakery's bills or my sleepless nights balancing books. Instead, they defended him, painting me as the problem. I hung up, staring at the parchment recipes on the wall, feeling the bakery's walls close in. Trevor's visits didn't stop. He'd slip in during busy hours when customers crowded the counter, grabbing cash while I served loaves. Each time I tried to talk to him, he'd twist it, claiming I was out to make him look bad. My parents backed him every time, their calls filled with guilt trips. "Family helps family," Mom would say, as if I owed Trevor my livelihood. I started locking the register, but he'd find ways around it, charming the part-time cashier into opening it. The bakery's funds dwindled, and I had to skip my own paycheck to cover flour shipments. Yet Trevor kept his fancy car, his downtown apartment, while I patched holes in the bakery's budget. I thought about Grandma Florence, how she'd trusted me to protect this place. Her lessons weren't just about dough, they were about standing firm. I'd close the bakery at night, the scent of bread lingering, and sit by the oven wondering how it got this bad. Trevor's debts were his own, but somehow I was the one paying. My parents' voices rang in my head, siding with him, dismissing my efforts. The bakery wasn't just a building, it was my promise to her. I wasn't giving it up no matter how much they pushed. 6 months ago, when my grandmother passed, everything changed. I sat in a small law office across from my grandmother's lawyer, Lawrence, his desk cluttered with files. He adjusted his glasses and slid a thick envelope toward me, sealed with her familiar handwriting. "Cassandra," he said, his voice steady. "Florence left the bakery to you." My heart skipped, a mix of pride and grief washing over me. The sourdough bakery, her life's work, was mine to carry forward. Lawrence read the will aloud, his words formal but clear. The old San Francisco house with its stone oven and parchment recipes belonged to me alone. I clutched the envelope, feeling her trust in me, heavy but warm. Inside was a letter from Grandma Florence, penned in her elegant script. I unfolded it carefully, my fingers trembling. She wrote about the bakery's roots, how it stood as a testament to our family's resilience since the gold rush. "This place is more than brick and dough," she wrote. "It's tradition. Protect it, Cassandra, no matter what." Her words hit hard, like a vow I couldn't break. I looked up at Lawrence, who nodded, his expression kind but professional. "She believed in you," he said, handing me the legal papers. I left his office, the letter tucked close, determined to honor her wish. When I got home, my parents called me over for coffee. I walked into their pristine living room, the air thick with tension. Mom smiled too brightly, setting out mugs, while Dad leaned back, arms crossed. Trevor sat next to his wife Dana, both dressed sharp, like they'd just stepped out of a boardroom. "We're so proud of you," Mom said, her voice syrupy, but her eyes darted to Dad. Trevor nodded, his grin forced, like he was reading from a script. I thanked them, wary, sensing something off. Then Dad cleared his throat. "That bakery's worth a fortune," he said, his tone casual but pointed. "San Francisco real estate's through the roof." Dana jumped in, her voice smooth like a realtor pitching a sale. "You could sell it, Cassandra. Clear Trevor's business debts and set yourself up nice." I froze, the letter's words echoing in my head. Trevor leaned forward, his eyes glinting. "It's just a building," he said, shrugging. "You don't need the hassle." I gripped my mug, the heat burning my palms. "It's not just a building," I said, my voice firm. "It's Grandma's legacy." Mom's smile faded, her lips tightening. "Don't be so sentimental," she snapped. "Think about your brother's future." I looked at Trevor, expecting some guilt, but he just smirked like he knew I'd cave. Dana kept talking, her words sharp, about market values and investment opportunities. "Properties like that don't stay affordable," she said, flipping through her phone, showing me listings. I shook my head, my stomach churning. "I'm not selling," I said, louder than I meant. Dad's face darkened. "You're sitting on a gold mine, Cassandra," he said, his voice low. "Don't let it go to waste." Mom reached for my hand, her touch cold. "We're family," she said, her tone pleading but edged with guilt. "Help Trevor out." I pulled my hand back, standing up. "Grandma wanted me to keep it," I said, clutching the letter in my pocket. Trevor scoffed, rolling his eyes. "You're acting like you're better than us," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. Dana nodded, her expression smug. "It's a smart move, Cassandra. Don't be stubborn." I felt their words pile on, each one heavier, trying to wear me down. I left without another word, their voices fading behind me. Back at the bakery, I sat at the counter, rereading Florence's letter. Her trust in me was clear, but so was the pressure building around me. My family wasn't done pushing, and I knew it. One evening, my parents called me over for a family talk. I walked into their dining room, the table set with Mom's best dishes, the air heavy with the smell of roasted chicken. Dad sat at the head, his face stern, while Mom fussed with napkins, avoiding my eyes. Trevor and Dana sat across from me, his suit crisp, her smile tight. The mood felt staged, like a play I hadn't rehearsed for. I took a seat, my stomach twisting, sensing this wasn't just dinner. Mom passed the potatoes, her voice too cheerful. "We need to talk about the bakery," she said, glancing at Dad. I gripped my fork, bracing myself. Trevor leaned back, swirling his wine glass. "I've got some debts," he said, his tone casual, like he was discussing the weather. "Bad real estate deals. It happens." I stared at him, waiting for more. He shrugged, meeting my eyes. "It's a lot, Cassandra. More than I can handle right now." I asked, how much, my voice steady but cold. He hesitated, then muttered, "A couple $100,000. My jaw dropped. That was more than the bakery's yearly revenue. Dana chimed in, her voice sharp. "The bakery's worth way more than that?" she said, leaning forward. "Sell it and Trevor's in the clear." I shook my head, my fingers tightening around the fork. "I'm not selling Grandma's bakery," I said, my words firm. Mom's face hardened. "Family helps family," she snapped, setting her glass down hard. "You can't just sit on that property while your brother struggles." Dad nodded, his voice low. "It's the responsible thing to do, Cassandra. Don't be selfish." I felt my chest tighten, their words echoing the guilt trips I'd heard before. I looked at Trevor, expecting some shame, but he just stared back, his eyes cold, like I owed him. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Mom frowned, not expecting anyone, and went to answer it. A man in a cheap suit stormed in, his face, red eyes locked on Trevor. "You've been dodging me," he barked, pointing a finger. "I'm Trevor's creditor, Chad. Where's my money?" The room went silent, the tension thick enough to choke on. Trevor shifted, his confidence fading. "I'm working on it," he mumbled, avoiding Chad's glare. Chad laughed, bitter. "Work faster or I'm taking you to court. You think you can hide behind your sister's bakery?" I stood up, my heart racing. "The bakery's mine," I said, my voice sharp. "It's not paying anyone's debts." Chad turned to me, his eyes narrowing. "Then you're letting your brother sink," he said, his tone mocking. Dana jumped in, her voice rising. "Cassandra, stop being so stubborn. Sell it or Trevor's ruined." I shook my head, feeling the room close in. Mom grabbed my arm, her grip tight. "Sell the bakery," she said, her voice low, almost pleading. "Or you're no longer our daughter." Dad nodded, his face like stone. "Choose Cassandra. Now." The words hit like a slap. I looked at them, Mom's desperate eyes, Dad's clenched jaw, Trevor's smug expression, Dana's calculated stare. I thought of Grandma, her letter, her trust in me. "I'm not selling," I said, my voice steady, though my hands shook. Trevor slammed his fist on the table, making the dishes rattle. "You're a traitor," he shouted, his face red. "You're tearing this family apart." Dana nodded, her eyes cold. "You're choosing a building over us," she said, her words dripping with scorn. Chad crossed his arms, watching the chaos unfold, a smirk on his face. I stood my ground, my heart pounding. "That bakery is Grandma's legacy," I said, looking at Trevor. "Not your piggy bank." Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "How dare you talk to your brother like that?" she yelled. Dad pointed at the door. "Get out if you won't help," he said, his voice final. I grabbed my coat, my eyes burning, but I didn't look back. As I stepped outside, Trevor's voice followed me, venomous. "You'll regret this, Cassandra." I shut the door, the night air cold against my skin, their ultimatum ringing in my ears. That night, I sat alone in the bakery, staring at my grandmother's old recipe. The parchment hung above the counter, its ink faded but legible, a relic of her love for this place. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the stone oven cooling in the back. My parents' ultimatum echoed in my mind, their voices sharp, demanding I give up everything Grandma Florence had built. I couldn't shake Trevor's sneer, calling me a traitor. My hands shook as I opened a dusty drawer in the old oak desk, searching for a pen to jot down supplier orders. Instead, I found a folded envelope sealed with her wax stamp and a worn notebook labeled Sourdough Starter. I broke the seal, my heart racing. Inside was a letter from Grandma Florence, her handwriting steady despite her age. "Cassandra," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, but the bakery is yours." She wrote about its history, how it carried our family through hard times, its dough kneaded with resilience. Then her tone shifted sharp and clear. I never trusted your parents or Trevor with this place, she wrote. They lack responsibility, always chasing quick money. You're different. Protect our legacy, no matter what they say. My eyes stung her words, a lifeline pulling me back from their demands. I clutched the letter, feeling her strength in me. I needed to talk to someone, so I called my best friend, Nikki. We met at a quiet cafe down the street, the clink of cups, a soft backdrop. I poured out everything, the ultimatum, Trevor's betrayal, the weight of Grandma's trust. Nikki listened, her eyes soft, not interrupting. You're not wrong to fight for this, she said, squeezing my hand. That bakery's your heart, just like it was hers. Her words steadied me, cutting through the fog of guilt my family had spun. I thanked her, my voice thick, knowing I had to act alone from here. The next morning, I called Lawrence, the lawyer who'd handled Grandma's will. His office was warm, lined with books, a stark contrast to the cold fight at my parents' house. I need to know my rights, I said, sliding the letter across his desk. He read it carefully, nodding. The bakery is legally yours, Cassandra. He said, his voice calm but firm. No one can force you to sell. Florence made that clear. I exhaled relief, mixing with resolve. What if I want to sell it on my terms? I asked. Lawrence raised an eyebrow, then smiled. You'd need a buyer who values its history, he said, jotting down a contact. That afternoon, I researched the contact, a community culinary organization in San Francisco dedicated to preserving local food traditions. Their mission aligned with Grandma's vision, teaching people to bake, sharing recipes, keeping history alive. I reached out, my hand steady as I dialed. A woman named Marilyn answered, her voice warm, eager to hear about the bakery. We talked for an hour, and I explained my goal: to protect the bakery's legacy, not let it become condos or a chain store. She agreed to visit, promising to bring her daughter who helped run the organization. I hung up, a spark of hope flaring in my chest. Sitting back at the bakery that evening, I reread Grandma's letter, her words sinking deeper. She'd seen through my parents' excuses, Trevor's recklessness, long before I did. The bakery wasn't just a building, it was her belief in me. Her defiance against their greed. I thought of Mom's clenched jaw, Dad's pointed finger, Trevor's smug accusations. They wanted the bakery's value in dollars, not its soul. I wouldn't let them win. Selling to the organization wasn't giving up. It was choosing Grandma's way, ensuring her recipes would live on in classes, not cash. I closed the notebook, the sourdough recipe tucked inside, and locked the bakery door. My decision was made. I'd sell the bakery to the organization, turning it into a place where others could learn what Grandma taught me. It felt right, like kneading dough until it held together. My family's threats couldn't touch me now. I walked home, the night air sharp, carrying a quiet strength I hadn't felt before. A week later, I met Marilyn at the bakery. She walked in with her daughter Jenna, both carrying notebooks and warm smiles. The morning light filtered through the bakery's old windows, casting a glow on the wooden counter. Marilyn, gray hair neatly pinned, studied the stone oven with reverence. This place is special, she said, her voice soft but earnest. Jenna nodded, jotting down notes. It's perfect for our vision, she added, her eyes bright. We sat at a small table, papers spread out, and I explained Grandma Florence's legacy, her recipes, her community spirit. They proposed turning the bakery into the Florence Carter Culinary Center, a place for baking classes and local food history. I signed the contract, my hand steady, knowing this honored Grandma's dream. That afternoon, as I locked the bakery door, a car screeched into the lot. My parents stormed out, followed by Trevor, Dana, and a man in a suit, a realtor clutching a briefcase. Mom's face was red, her voice shrill. What's this about a sale? She demanded, pointing at the bakery. Dad's eyes narrowed. You didn't tell us, Cassandra, he said, his tone icy. I stood tall, meeting their glares. I sold it, I said, my voice calm. To a community organization. It's becoming a culinary center. The realtor's face fell, his plans for condos crumbling. Dana's jaw dropped, her voice sharp. "You threw away a fortune," she snapped, stepping closer. Trevor pushed forward, his eyes blazing. "You're destroying our family," he shouted, his hands clenched. "I needed that money." I shook my head, unmoved. "It's not your money, Trevor." I said, my words firm. "It never was." Mom grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "How could you do this to your brother?" she yelled. Dad pointed at me, his voice low. "You've gone too far, Cassandra." I pulled free, my heart pounding but resolute. "I'm keeping Grandma's legacy alive," I said. "Not bailing out Trevor's mistakes." The realtor shuffled awkwardly, sensing the deal was dead. That evening, my phone buzzed with notifications. Trevor had posted on social media a long rant calling me a family wrecker who stole his future. The post spread fast, comments piling up from strangers and distant relatives, some siding with him, others questioning my choice. I scrolled through, my stomach twisting, but I didn't respond. He'd twisted the truth, painting himself as the victim. I shut off my phone, refusing to let his words shake me. Grandma's letter, still tucked in my pocket, reminded me why I'd done this. Her trust outweighed their noise. The next morning, as I swept the bakery floor, Chad appeared at the door, his cheap suit wrinkled, his face grim. "Trevor," he barked, ignoring me. "Where's my payment?" Trevor, who'd followed him, froze, his confidence gone. "I'm working on it," he muttered, his voice weak. Chad laughed, cold and sharp. "You're out of time," he said, pulling out a legal notice. "I'm suing you. No bakery money's saving you now." I watched, silent, as Trevor's face paled, his hands shaking. Dana stepped between them, her voice shrill. "Cassandra could have fixed this," she said, glaring at me. I met her eyes, unflinching. "That's not my job," I said, turning back to my broom. My parents stood nearby, their faces a mix of anger and shock. Mom's voice broke as she spoke. "You're heartless," she said, tears in her eyes. "You've ruined us." Dad shook his head, his voice flat. "Don't expect to come back to this family." I paused, the broom still in my hands, their words heavy but not breaking me. "I don't need to apologize," I said, looking at them all. "This was Grandma's bakery, not your ATM." Trevor lunged forward, his voice a hiss. "You'll pay for this, Cassandra," he said, but Chad grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Pay me first." Chad snapped, his eyes cold. I turned away, walking to the counter where Grandma Florence's recipe hung. The sale was final, the bakery's future secure as a community hub. My family's anger couldn't change that. I'd chosen her legacy over their demands, and I felt no regret. As they left, their voices fading, I locked the door, the weight of their threats lifting. The bakery was no longer mine, but it would live on just as she'd wanted. After that day, I heard nothing from my family. The silence was deafening, but it gave me space to breathe. I'd moved into a small apartment near the Florence Carter Culinary Center, a cozy place with just enough room for my books and a few of Grandma Florence's old baking tools. The center had opened its doors, and I spent my days teaching sourdough classes, watching students knead dough under the same roof where Grandma once taught me. The parchment recipes now framed on the walls drew smiles from visitors who loved the story of our family's gold rush roots. I felt her presence in every loaf, her legacy alive in the laughter of new bakers. Word spread about Trevor's troubles. Chad had followed through, dragging him to court over unpaid debts. A friend from the neighborhood sent me a news clipping. Trevor's real estate ventures had collapsed, leaving him bankrupt. His San Francisco penthouse, once a symbol of his flashy lifestyle, was seized to cover legal fees. I pictured him packing boxes, his tailored suits useless now, and felt a pang of pity, but no regret. He'd made his choices leaning on Grandma's bakery to dodge responsibility. The court ruling was clear, no amount of charm could save him this time. Dana's fall was quieter but just as sharp. Trevor's social media rant calling me a family wrecker had backfired. It spread beyond our circle, catching the eye of her real estate clients. They questioned her professionalism, whispering about her role in pushing for the bakery's sale. A local business blog posted a scathing piece linking her to Trevor's failed deals. Her polished reputation unraveled, and she lost two big contracts in a week. I saw her once outside a coffee shop, her face drawn, scrolling through her phone with a frown. She didn't notice me, and I kept walking, the weight of her accusations gone. My parents faced their own reckoning. The community they'd once charmed turned cold. Neighbors who'd loved Grandma's bakery heard about their role in pressuring me to sell. Invitations to local events, charity dinners, block parties stopped coming. A mutual friend told me Mom tried to explain at a town meeting, claiming they were protecting family. No one bought it. They'd backed Trevor's greed over Grandma's legacy, and the town didn't forget. I imagined Dad's stern face, Mom's forced smile as they sat alone in their pristine living room, their social circle shrinking. I settled into my new routine, waking early to prep for classes. The culinary center buzzed with activity, kids shaping roles, retirees mastering starters. I taught them Grandma's tricks, like letting dough rest just right, and shared stories of her baking through tough times. One afternoon, as I cleaned the teaching kitchen, Nikki dropped by. She stood in the doorway, her grin wide, holding a basket of muffins. "Cassandra, this place is amazing," she said, looking around. "You did it. You kept her dream alive." I smiled, taking a muffin, its warmth comforting. "Thanks, Nikki," I said, my voice steady. Her pride in me felt like a quiet victory, no heavy emotions needed. I didn't dwell on my family's fallout. Trevor's bankruptcy, Dana's lost deals, my parents' isolation, they were consequences of their own making. I'd spent years caught in their demands, their guilt trips, but now I was free. My apartment, small as it was, felt like home, filled with the scent of fresh bread I baked for myself. The center gave me purpose, a way to honor Grandma without their shadows. I'd walk to class each morning, passing the old bakery's familiar facade, now a hub for new bakers. It wasn't mine anymore, but it was exactly where it belonged. Sometimes I'd catch myself wondering if Mom or Dad would reach out, maybe soften with time. But I didn't need their approval. Grandma's letter, still tucked in a drawer, had shown me the truth: they'd never valued what she built. I'd made my choice, and it was the right one. As I locked the center's door one evening, the sunset painting the sky orange, I felt a quiet strength. The bakery's legacy lived on, and so did I, on my own terms. 3 months later, I stood in the center, gazing at the sourdough recipe on the wall. The Florence Carter Culinary Center had become a beacon in San Francisco, its classes packed with eager bakers from kids to retirees, all learning Grandma Florence's craft. The local paper ran a feature praising the center for preserving the city's food heritage. They called it a living tribute to a woman who'd fed her community through decades of change. I traced the faded ink of her recipe, its curves familiar from childhood, and felt a quiet peace settle over me. This was her dream, realized not in dollars but in shared loaves and stories. The center hummed with life. Students kneaded dough on long tables, their laughter mixing with the scent of fresh bread. I taught them how to coax a starter to life, just as Grandma had shown me, her patience guiding my hands. Visitors marveled at the framed parchments, asking about the gold rush days when our family's bakery began. I'd share her tales, like how she baked through blackouts, her oven a steady light. The community embraced the center, hosting events where neighbors swapped recipes and memories. It wasn't just a building anymore, it was a legacy woven into the city's heart. I'd found my own calm amidst the flower and warmth. My small apartment, a short walk away, was a haven of simple comforts: a worn cookbook, a teapot, a window overlooking the bay. I no longer checked my phone for messages from my parents or Trevor, their silence a choice I'd accepted. Grandma's letter, now tucked in a frame beside my bed, reminded me why I'd fought for this. She'd seen the truth about my family's priorities, money over meaning, and trusted me to choose differently. I had, and the weight of their demands was gone, replaced by a clarity I hadn't known I needed. Looking back, I saw the cost of their choices: My parents' once fixtures at local gatherings now faced closed doors, their role in pushing me to sell the bakery, known to all. Trevor's bankruptcy had stripped him of his flashy life, leaving him to rebuild from nothing. Dana's career tied to his reckless schemes crumbled under the scrutiny of his public outburst. Their attempts to manipulate me to bend my values for their gain had unraveled their own lives. I didn't wish them ill, but I understood now chasing quick fixes over integrity breaks more than just trust, it breaks bonds. The lesson wasn't just mine to learn. Standing in the center watching a young girl shape her first loaf, I realized what Grandma had always known. True value lies in what you build, not what you take. Money fades, but a legacy of care through bread stories or community endures. My family's pressure, their guilt trips had aimed to pull me from that truth, but I'd held firm. Their loss of connection to me and to others was the real price of their choices. I'd chosen Grandma's way, and it led me to a life rooted in purpose, not profit. To everyone listening to this story, I want to say thank you. You followed me through this journey from the weight of a will to the freedom of this moment. Grandma Florence's bakery taught me that what we cherish, whether it's a recipe, a memory, or a dream, is worth protecting. I hope my story sparks something in you. What's the one thing you hold dear? A tradition, a passion, a piece of your history. How would you stand up for it even when it's hard? Share your thoughts. I'd love to hear what keeps you grounded, what legacy you'd fight for. Your stories matter just as much as mine. As I locked the center's door that evening, the sunset glowed over San Francisco, painting the sky in hues of gold. I walked home, my steps light, carrying the warmth of the day's work. The bakery was no longer mine, but its spirit lived on in every loaf baked, every lesson shared. I'd found my place not in my family's shadow, but in the light of Grandma's vision. That was enough.